G'day guys, Nathan here, and I'll be showing you how to change your oil filter and fuel filter on your Ford Territory SZ. So this is the turbo diesel Territory. If you got the Barra motor, the 6-cylinder petrol, this is not going to be relevant to you at all. But if you got the turbo diesel, all the turbo diesels are the same up to this current, actually no, yeah, totally, up to 2016 they made these. Plus minimal tools required, you don't need to be fancy or have anything like that. So let's get straight into it. Something else really important. For some reason I was saying a 15 mil, it's a 15 mil bolt for the sump. It's not 15, it's a 16 mil. I had the 15 and 16 mil spanners right next to each other and got them confused. It's not a 15, it's a 16. Obviously, if you got tools, you're probably going to have them both, but just wanted to clarify that if I say in the video 15, I do mean 16. So it's got a plastic cover, you can kind of see. You don't need to take that off. The first time I had to do an oil change, I couldn't find the bloody bolt and took this whole thing off, and it's a real mess around. Do yourself a favor, don't take it off. If you have a look underneath there, eventually you'll find a little bolt. It's kind of in a bit of a triangle shape where the plastic's cut out, and then you undo that bolt. It's a 15 millimeter. So minimal tools that you're going to need for this, but you wouldn't need a 15 mil. I used a spanner. You would be hard pressed to get a socket in there, but here's the thing, you don't need to jack up your car. So I just got factory wheels on here, standard height, it's all normal, and I am able to get underneath there. A little bit awkward, but not too bad, and just get on there with the 15 mil spanner, loosen it off and do the rest by hand. The last little bit's a bit awkward because it's got the plastic covering it, so you kind of get your hand in there in a bit of a funny angle and wiggle it, and obviously, you know, you don't want to get oil on you. Plus you got your oil catcher, so it's a little bit awkward. I wore gloves, I still got oil all over me, but yeah, wear gloves. And then the other thing I did was I just got a rag and then put it around my wrist like that. Put it around my wrist, pulled up my sleeves, and tucked the rag into your gloves, and then that way if anything gets on you, it's not going to run down your wrist, because that's just the worst. So you don't need to jack up your car. If you do want to jack up your car, you can, but unfortunately Ford didn't make it too easy for you. There's no point under the middle that you can jack it up. So you have to jack up one side on the chassis rail, then jack up the other side, undo your bolts, or use a socket if you want. Drain out as much oil as you can, but then you've got to drop your car down to get the rest of that oil in there. So if you can manage without using the jack and stand, well, one, you don't need the tools, you save a bit of time, plus it's, you know, saves you a little bit of mucking around. Yeah, so it's relatively easy to get that part done, but a quick tip is to start your engine, let it warm up, let it get nice and hot, so that all that oil is heated and therefore less viscous and easier to flow out. It's better to do that. And if you're wearing gloves and get a bit of oil on you, it shouldn't really hurt or anything. Maybe if you're wearing those real thin clear ones, but generally speaking, if you're just wearing any other type of gloves, it'll feel a bit hot, but you're not going to get burnt. But you are better off heating your engine up if you want to take it for a drive or whatever. Get all the engine hot so that the whole thing is less viscous and more of it comes out. So you drop your oil. I've just put mine in there, right? And while that's all draining out, you want to leave that to obviously drain for as long as possible to just get those tiny bits that will cover up in the walls and whatnot. And then you want to bring your attention over to the fuel filter. So your fuel filter is in the engine bay, and it sits right there, and it's got this little contraption, or this is the actual filter itself. It sits in underneath all that, right? Obviously you'll be able to see that because you'll be looking at your car, right? And it's piss easy to take out. It's got those clips there. All you got to do is press, so they'll be like in order and stuff. Well, it'll pretty much be like in that, how it goes on. And it's got these little clips, these little buttons. They have a button on each side, and so you just got to press both of those buttons, and it'll just click off. Like, for this one here, press both those buttons, it'll push off, all of them. So there's 4 of them, right? Once you take those 4 off, then there's also down here, there is a little clip, a wire. One thing that you want to do before you pull it all apart, when it's still in the car, is pay attention to how it's in there roughly, because it does matter how it goes in, but don't be too worried, because essentially it won't fit in and work and connect properly if you've done it wrong. When you're looking at your filter, it's going to look like that in the car. So this is pretty much as in this, you're looking at the car. So obviously the driver's side, right? So it's here. So you've got those 4 things, as I said, you clip them off. You kind of somewhat have to do them one at a time because they're kind of in the way. So I took off this one, I think, then this one, then that one, then that one. Oh, sorry, then the middle one. But whatever, floats your boat, and then your little clip. It's all pretty easy to come off. When you're pulling this apart, you've got to take off the screw in there and a screw in there. The top one is one of these guys, the little star ones, and that is it's this one here, a T20. So I just had that in my, I don't know, whatever you call that. So you got to do that. If you've done any work to your territory before, you know that this is the torque bit they use. I'm pretty sure it's called torque bit, T20, and that's for everything. I'll also show you how to change your air filter. I won't be changing mine for my filter, but I will give it a clean out. But pretty much when you're undoing this, a lot of cars just have clips you can pop off, which is convenient. Again, Ford didn't really make it easy for you in this regard. So I think you can see down there, for example, it's the it's the T20. And then the bottom screw here is, well, it's kind of a bolt and a screw. I was just able to use a Phillips and take that off. Once you've taken that bolt out, to take this clip off, if you look, sorry, it's a bit fiddly here. So just there, you got to pull back that little thing, that little bit there, you can see. Pull that back and then lift the clip up, and then it'll come off with a bit of wiggle. There we go. Yeah, and then that clip comes off there and that goes into the bottom. And then from there, you should be able to pull everything apart. So now that you have taken your canister, the plastic off the canister, it's going to have the wire that you unclipped, right? That was in there and it's screwed on. So you just unscrew that, pull it off, and then that's your old one done. That'll be full of diesel. So I've kind of just emptied that out. But essentially, yeah, that's what it looks like. I suppose that's one from Ford. I'm not replacing it with a genuine Ford, just as I showed you. A Cooper, which seems to be alright. Anyway, so when you do that, you've got your new one, right? Your new filter. I haven't taken those off yet, but you'll have, instead of having this on the bottom, which is obviously the car part, you're going to have one of these white clips. I mean, there might be some slight differences with different brands. I'm not sure. This is just how mine looks, but it's the same deal. That was just on there. Screw it off, and then inside there is a little rubber seal. Now, the original one for the car was that red one there, and it's obviously old and done its time. So you pull the new rubber seal out of that one, and you pop it inside there, and then you can fit that back. Oh, sorry, fit that back onto your new filter, connect it up, then obviously put your plastic things back on. One thing I will add is mine. I hadn't changed my oil filter in a while. I'd done the basic service, but I skipped the filter. So mine had, oh, it's a bit out of focus there. Yeah, so mine had some crap like on, where's the flat bit? On that little flat bit there, had a bit of shit in there. So just make sure you clean it out with a clean rag. I know it looks a bit messy, but it's just kind of oily and whatever. Put the screws in, but don't tighten them up. What you want to do is go fit it into the car, check it. So essentially what you're going to try and figure out how to do is, you want to get it in there. So the way that it came out, it's approximately that position. See how, as in you got the two there and those. See down there, you'll line up your holes, the 3 little clips, and they should clip in like that. And then once they have, you should see that these should approximately go, you know, where they should. Get it all in place, put the screws in, but don't tighten them up. Put that into position, lock that in, and then holding the bottom of that plastic hard up against the canister, you want to make sure that that wire just there is somewhat in that location, because at least for me, that's the factory location. And then you want to get your wire wherever that's gone and connect it back on. But before you do, then you want to again take this out, tighten up all your screws, making sure you try and keep everything in its exact location, and then re-put it in and connect up that wire. I'll come back when I've done that. Alright, so I've got that back on, that clip there. That cable is, you know, quite long, you'll probably notice, so you may even be able to put that in different locations, but as far as I'm concerned, that's where it was on my car, so I'm just putting it back there, hoping that the last person who changed this put it back in the right place. And then, as I said, you're just going to clip these back on, so if you can see, it's kind of in that triangular motion, and that points toward, you know, the side of the car. Essentially, it's pointing at the at that clip back there, the wire clip, and then you're going to pop these back on, and it's quite easy. Just pop it on. Obviously, making sure you put the right ones, you know, back on the same places, and they just clip on pretty easily like that. You hear them pop. There we go, and that is your fuel filter done. Now, obviously this whole time your oil has been draining, but no doubt that would be fully done by now, but we're going to then go on to the oil filter. So, you pull off your engine cover. Oh yeah, I didn't say that at the start. Pull off your engine cover, it's pretty easy. You just got to take off your, whatever that's called, your oil cap. And then no screws or anything, that plastic cap just pops off. And essentially, your fuel filter is that bugger right in the middle there. So, nice and convenient. You don't have to crawl under the car or anything like that. So, it says obviously not to use on the left there a ratchet gun or air tools, and on that one not to use an adjustable spanner. I actually don't have a socket or a spanner big enough. It's either a 31 or a 32. Unfortunately, that's all I got. And when I measure that, measure this and measure that, it's about 31 or 32 millimeters. So it'll be either of those. If you got one big enough, cool. If not, well, that's the only tool you got. The reason I say it is obviously just because this is not the oil filter. This is just the case, and then the cartridge goes inside of this. And if you break this, well, you're stuffed. Like, you know, you have to obviously go and replace that before you can use your car again, so it's a pain in the ass. And this is only plastic, so you know, you want to be careful with that, and that's obviously why they say not to do things like that. So just be careful with it. Hopefully the person who did it before you, or the last time you did it, wasn't too tight and you don't do any damage. But otherwise, you want to take that off, and then you're going to see the oil filter cartridge on the inside. Because we've drained the oil first, this should have minimal oil in it, because obviously gravity is going to drop that all down. But it is a pain in the ass. I've done it before. It does still drop oil everywhere. So have a rag handy if you even want to chuck it around the perimeter here. Be mindful when you're taking it out to try and keep it, you know, right in the center there, and then, you know, carefully tip it upside down so that you don't get oil everywhere. I won't be able to do all that with one hand, so pretty much I'm just telling you, and then I'm going to do it myself. So go ahead and pull that off. So it is a bit of a pain in the ass. Once you undone it, this bloody wire gets in the way. Well, really, it's that little, see that little coily bit? That gets in the way. It's just a bugger. You're trying to pull your filter out quick so you don't put oil everywhere, and it's getting caught on that. So that's a real bastard. But obviously that's what it's going to look like on the inside there. That's, as I said, trying to keep it in the middle so that it catches all of that and doesn't go everywhere. I've got a little bit there, you can see, but it wasn't too bad. And then once you've taken that out, it's going to look like this. So that's your cartridge, obviously the bottom and the part you screwed off, and then that inside there is your oil filter.
and this is your new one. Again, Cooper. It pretty much just comes with a rubber seal and one of those, and obviously you can see that's the way it goes with that little nipple at the top. So pretty much you can't take this out, or you might be able to do it by hand if you want to get yourself dirty, but just grab a pair of pliers, grab it on there, and you just have to give it a good hard wiggle, and hopefully you don't break that off. It's a little bit tight, but it comes out. When you put it back in, it's piss easy. And then the other thing is, it's kind of hard because it's hard to see because it's all black, but pretty much, yeah, right there where my finger is, that's a black seal. That's the I just threw back in the box, so that'll go on there and replace that when you do it. Alright, so that's what happens when you get it off. So pretty much just grab that, give it you know, a hard yank, and hopefully within 2 or 3 times it comes out. But yeah, pretty much you just want to grab it from that little nipple, as I said, with a pair of pliers, and oh shit, just dump that and make sure oil doesn't go everywhere. There shouldn't be too much oil in there, but there'll probably be a little bit, and you'll want to discard that. I know you can't really see, but some oil in there. You want to discard that just because obviously you want to get as much fresh, clean oil in there as possible. And once you've pulled the old rubber seal off, put your new one on. It'll probably be all rolled up and not be like even. So just put a screwdriver in there. It's relatively flexible, and then you're just going to spin that screwdriver around. So pretty much you're just going to go like that, and that's just going to straighten it all up. It makes it heaps easier. And then you can just pull that out, and your whole new thing should be in there nice and flat and all beautiful. Right, so once you've got that done, you're going to grab your new oil cartridge. You won't put it into the canister just yet. If you look inside there on the left from the middle, you can see a bit of a hole. The nipple on the oil filter goes inside of there. So you put that in first, locate it, and once it goes into that hole, you'll feel it have a bit of a pop. You probably have to crawl on your car a bit to get it. There we go. So once, again, a bit hard to show you guys with one hand, but once that's in place there, then when you turn that, it won't move. It won't turn, sorry. So once you've got your oil filter in there and it's located in that little hole, then you're going to put the case back on, and well, you can't see here, but you'll be able to see yourself, it's spring loaded. So essentially that just sits in there and it seems a little bit loose, and then you're going to fit this over, miss those few things that get in your way, and then you should be able to just screw that back on. I don't think that's right. There we go. As long as you can't, oh yeah, you can probably just do that a little bit with your hand. So pretty much, yeah, hand tight like that. And as I said, it'll go tighter, so you don't want to do it any harder. So then at this stage, you've got your fuel filter and your oil filter done. Now that you've drained your oil, it's probably been, I don't know, probably, if you're fast, 10 minutes or 20 minutes to get all to this stage. And then you got to obviously put your sump bolt back in. So get all this out of the way, clean it up if you can, just get a bit of a rag, wipe around the area, check your sump bolt, make sure it's in good condition. If not, just go to your local parts store, Super Cheap Auto, whatever, make sure you got a good one. Otherwise, if it's in perfectly fine condition and the seal around it is good, then you can just go ahead and put that bolt back on the bottom again. Now that you've done those things, you're going to want to change your air filter as well. That's piss easy. As I mentioned earlier, where is it? There we go. As I mentioned, it's that, I think it's got a Torx 20, was it? What did I say? Yeah, Torx 20. It's the T20, not the 25. That's just missing. T20, and then you take off. It's pretty much just got 4 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can wiggle that off, open that up, and then when I took out my air filter, it was all dirty, plus there's crap in there, so I'm going to vacuum that out because the actual air tube that it sucks in is right there. So vacuum that out, and then if you got a reusable air filter, you're just going to give it a clean. That's mine here. Otherwise, if you just got a new one, go ahead and slap your new one in. I mean, mine's got heaps of crap in it. I mean, look at all that. That just came out. So I'm going to give that a bit of a clean. Once you've got all that done and your air filter is changed, you've done up those 4 screws again, that's done. And obviously the last thing is filling up your oil. So take your cap off and putting in whatever oil is recommended for the car, whatever your mechanic said, whatever. I like Penrite, and that was what it was available for me. Now, the engine, I think the factory says it's like a 6 litre capacity, or maybe it's like 6.2 or something like that. The standard ones are 5, then you can get the 6 litre ones, which are obviously a tad bigger, but I found that it still wasn't enough, and I had to buy more. I didn't do it straight away, but I had to buy more just to fill it up. So essentially, if you grab a 6 litre oil, then it's going to fill up your car, and it will be safe, but I think it only filled up the dipstick till about a quarter or maybe halfway. So I've gone the 7 litre, which is this one. Otherwise, the next one up is a 10 litre. You can get that, and it's kind of anywhere from 70 to 100 bucks, or at least from the cheaper place that I get it from. But get your oil. As you can see, I've got a 540 petrol and diesel, and it fully synthetic. Depending on what size you buy, depending on how much you put in, but obviously put in however much is going to be close to about that 6 litre mark, and then check your dipstick, put a bit more, check it, wipe your dipstick, put it in, put a bit more, wipe it, check it, until you get it to about full. When you do that, that doesn't necessarily mean it's full, because usually once the engine's run and stuff, it gets oil into all the places it needs to. It fills up the oil canister and any other bits and pieces. So what you'll find is after your first drive, when you check your dipstick, once you've let it all settle, give it at least 20 minutes or so, and then check it. It'll probably be, if it was on high, it'd probably be right on low, somewhere around there. Don't worry, you just top it up. But don't do it too soon after you've started the engine and gone for a little drive, or just let it warm up or whatever. But you want to at least let it run for a bit to get all the oil through. But yeah, at least let it sit for 20 minutes, half an hour, if not longer if you can, to get a really accurate reading before you put more oil in, because obviously you want to make sure it's accurate. The other thing is, when you get in your car, you're going to want to prime the system. So you took out all the diesel from the diesel filter, and all the lines and whatnot. It kind of drips out and whatever, so you have to prime that. So when you start your car, put your ignition on, but don't turn the engine on, and just listen for the sounds. Now, if you got this car, you know the sounds it makes. They're bloody loud, but all that beeping and noises that you hear, that's essentially the system priming itself and making sure that it's all ready. So this is what you're going to hear. Right, and if you got this car, as I said, you're familiar with that. What you do is turn that on, leave it for about 20 seconds or so, 20 or 30 seconds. I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it exactly, but 20 or 30 seconds, turn it off, pull your key out. It'll keep buzzing and beeping for a little bit. Wait 10 or so seconds, and it should stop. Then once you've done that, put your key in again, turn the ignition on, don't start the engine. It'll start beeping and making all that stuff. Leave it again for 20 or 30 seconds. Same thing, turn your key out. And you're going to do that anywhere from 2 to 4 times. And essentially all you're doing is, every time you turn the key on, you're telling the car, put fuel into the system. And so it's going to be priming up that the fuel canister that we just replaced. And then after you do that, you'll be able to start up your engine, and if there's no complications, it should start up just fine. What it'll do is, when you first turn the key, obviously you're going to make sure, double check all your stuff. You've done up your sump plug, you put your oil cap back on, you've checked your fluids, you've tightened up all your bolts, you've made sure that all the the fuel canister plugs are on and clicked on nice. And once you've crossed all your T's, you start your car, and on your screen there, it'll pop up and say low oil pressure. That should only be there for a couple of seconds, because essentially there's no oil where that sensor is. There's no oil there yet because you've drained it all out. So after a few seconds, the oil will start to pump through the car, and everything should go back to normal. And providing you've done everything right, that should just disappear in about 2 or 3 seconds, something like that. Then go drive your car around. As I said earlier in the video, drive it around, get it hot, and then when you come back home after whatever, 5-10 minutes or whatever, just check everything. Make sure it's not leaking at the bottom, make sure there's no fuel coming out, whatever, and you should all be good. Last time that I did an oil change, I noticed that I made a bit of a mess, like trying to get that canister off the first time. And I gave you guys a few pointers on where it gets caught. It took me a bit to get off, and a lot of the oil didn't fall back into the engine. It kind of fell on the outside of it. And so what happened was, I thought I had an oil leak for about a week after I did the oil, because essentially it's the oil that I spilt was coming down the engine, however it does, toward the back, and then ending up on the ground. And so I'd go to the shops and park home and stuff, and there'd be oil on the ground, and I was shitting bricks. But it's only because I made a mess. So if you do make a mess and you think you get oil everywhere, it'll be on the ground. Something to note is that your oil will be pretty clean for the first few days probably, and so if it's clear oil, you got a leak. If it's black oil, it's probably just the old stuff that's fallen off the engine if you made a mess. But I've gone out for a drive, checked everything, and I haven't had any dramas, and I've got no oil, which is good. So hopefully you guys find the same. I think that's about it for this video. I hope you find that helpful, all the tips and tricks that I give, and I hope that you can feel empowered to be able to do it yourself and save yourself some money. I just got a quote today to do a basic service, not even to the extent that I just did, and it was going to cost me over $200, and I just did all this myself for about $130, and plus there's a whole bunch of other things you do when you get a service you can do for free. I've already rotated my front tires. You just check all 4 tires, you see if there's any uneven wear. So typically they'll change the front 2, you can do that, and generally speaking, after you've done that one time, then you swap them over, but you go crisscross, so the front left will go to the rear right and vice versa. Obviously you're going to check your fluids, you're going to make sure everything's okay, your coolant's the right color, and everything's topped up, and wiper blades and anything else you want to do. And that's essentially I don't know if I'd say a major service. It's kind of halfway between a minor and a major service, and you should be able to do it all yourself for free. So hopefully that helps. If you like this kind of video, guys, if it's helpful, if you appreciate it, let me know by liking the video and commenting your thoughts, and let me know if it helped you. The other thing that makes a big difference, guys, is if you subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be putting out all types of content about predominantly about cars and DIY type stuff. So if you find this useful, subscribe, click on the little subscribe thing below, and make sure that you tick that bell so that you hear all the newest videos that are coming out. I try to keep it interesting, and I try to keep content that you guys really like. So hope that helps, guys, and thanks for watching.